The Cleveland Browns organization is experiencing an earthquake that nobody saw coming, and the aftershocks are about to reshape the entire franchise. What just happened in that locker room after the Raiders game wasn't just post-game commentary or polite teammate support. This was a full-scale power play that sent shockwaves through the coaching staff, front office, and every corner of the NFL. Myles Garrett, the absolute alpha of that defense and arguably the most dominant defensive force in professional football right now, just publicly crowned Shedeur Sanders as Cleveland's quarterback of the future. And if you think that was just friendly encouragement, you've completely missed what's actually happening here. This isn't about being a good teammate. This is about the franchise's most valuable asset telling Kevin Stefanski and the entire Browns organization that they better not screw this up. When your defensive superstar uses his platform to tell the world that your fifth-round rookie quarterback just made a throw that most NFL starters cannot make, that's not analysis. That's a declaration of allegiance. That's Myles Garrett drawing a line in the sand and telling management that the locker room has already chosen its quarterback. The coaching staff can either get on board with what's happening or watch this opportunity slip through their fingers while the building burns down around them. Let's talk about what Myles Garrett actually said, because every single word matters here. After personally recording 3 sacks in an absolutely dominant defensive performance, where the Browns' defense collectively terrorized the Raiders with 10 total sacks, Garrett could have spent his entire post-game press conference talking about his own dominance. He could have discussed defensive schemes, his pass rush technique, or how the defensive line controlled the game. Instead, he deliberately chose to use that platform to praise his rookie quarterback. Not just general praise either, but specific technical evaluation that carries enormous weight coming from someone of Garrett's stature and experience. There are not many guys in the league who can make that throw. That was Garrett's exact quote, referring to Shedeur's 52-yard laser beam to Isaiah Bond that had the entire sideline erupting. Now, let's break down why that statement is absolutely loaded with significance that goes way beyond surface-level teammate support. Myles Garrett isn't some practice squad player offering generic encouragement. He's a 3-time first-team All-Pro selection. He's a former Defensive Player of the Year. He's the cornerstone of the entire Cleveland Browns franchise and the player that every single decision revolves around. When Myles Garrett speaks, general managers listen. When he evaluates talent, his opinion carries the weight of years spent watching elite quarterbacks from across the line of scrimmage. Garrett has spent his entire professional career studying quarterbacks, learning their tendencies, exploiting their weaknesses, and occasionally watching them make throws that even he has to respect. He's faced Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and every elite quarterback in the league. He knows what exceptional arm talent looks like. He understands the difference between a scheme-generated completion and pure physical ability combined with mental processing under pressure. So when Myles Garrett tells you that Shedeur Sanders just made a throw that most NFL quarterbacks cannot make, he's not exaggerating for effect or being politically correct. He's giving you his honest professional assessment based on years of elite-level experience, and that assessment should terrify every other quarterback on Cleveland's roster. The specific throw that Garrett referenced deserves its own deep dive, because this wasn't some clean pocket, wide-open receiver, easy completion that any competent quarterback could make. This was the 52-yard completion to Isaiah Bond, where everything broke down around Shedeur. The protection collapsed almost immediately. Defenders were closing in from multiple angles. Any reasonable quarterback would have either taken the sack, thrown the ball away, or panicked and made a terrible decision that resulted in a turnover. Shedeur Sanders did none of those things. Instead, he stayed calm, kept his eyes downfield, subtly moved within the pocket to create just enough space, and then absolutely uncorked a missile downfield into a tight window that required perfect ball placement, velocity, and timing. That wasn't a jump ball where you throw it up and hope your receiver makes a play. That was a precise strike that had to be thrown to a specific spot with enough velocity to get there before the defense could react, but with enough touch that the receiver could actually catch it. The degree of difficulty on that throw was off the charts, and everyone on that sideline knew it immediately. The entire Browns sideline erupted with genuine shock and excitement. You could see players literally jumping up and down, celebrating with expressions that clearly communicated they couldn't believe what they just witnessed. Those aren't manufactured reactions. Those aren't guys going through the motions of supporting a teammate. Those are legitimate responses from professional athletes who understand exactly how difficult that throw was and are genuinely shocked that their rookie quarterback just pulled it off. When your own sideline is stunned by a play your quarterback just made, that tells you everything you need to know about the level of talent on display. These are guys who practice against elite talent every single day. They've seen every throw imaginable in practice and games. They're not easily impressed. And yet, there they were, absolutely losing their minds over what Shedeur just did. That authentic reaction from teammates cannot be faked or manufactured. You can tell when guys are genuinely excited versus just going through the motions, and the Browns sideline was absolutely electric after that completion. But here's what makes this even more significant. That 52-yard bomb wasn't some isolated moment of brilliance surrounded by mediocrity. Shedeur also completed a 39-yard pass to Jerry Jeudy that showcased touch and accuracy on a different type of throw entirely. He executed the screen pass to Dylan Sampson that turned into a 66-yard touchdown, showing his ability to make the simple plays that allow your playmakers to do damage in space. Throughout that entire game, Shedeur attacked defenses at all three levels of the field. Short passes, intermediate routes, deep shots. He showed he can beat defenses in multiple ways, rather than being limited to one type of throw or offensive scheme. That versatility is exactly what has Myles Garrett and other Browns veterans so excited about what they're seeing from their rookie quarterback. It's one thing to have a big arm and occasionally make spectacular throws. It's another thing entirely to show you can run a complete NFL offense, make different types of throws to different levels of the field, and adjust to whatever the defense is giving you. Shedeur demonstrated all of that in his debut start, and the veterans on that roster recognized immediately that they might have something special developing at the most important position in sports. Now let's talk about the journey that brought Shedeur to this moment, because understanding where he came from makes this story even more compelling and gives critical context to why Myles Garrett's support carries so much weight. Shedeur Sanders was once widely considered a legitimate first-round talent by numerous draft analysts, scouts, and football evaluators. Some projections had him going in the top 10 picks based on his college performance at both Jackson State and Colorado, his obvious leadership qualities, and what appeared to be an NFL-ready skill set that would allow him to contribute immediately. But draft day arrived, and something bizarre happened. The first round came and went without Shedeur's name being called. Okay, maybe teams were concerned about something specific. The second round passed. Still no Shedeur Sanders. The third round concluded. Nothing. The fourth round finished. Radio silence. When he finally heard his name called by the Cleveland Browns with the 144th overall pick in the fifth round, it was simultaneously a relief that he'd been drafted at all, and an absolute shock that he'd lasted that long. How does a quarterback with first-round talent and first-round production fall all the way to the fifth round? What did teams see or think they saw that scared them away from a player who had demonstrated success at every level? The explanations for his draft day fall varied wildly depending on which scout or analyst you asked. Some questioned his arm strength, which seems absolutely ridiculous now after watching him sling the ball 50-plus yards downfield with velocity and accuracy. Others worried about whether he could succeed without his father coaching him, as if being coached by Deion Sanders was somehow a negative rather than an advantage that accelerated his development. There were whispers about contract demands and equity clauses being complications that scared teams away. And of course, There was the usual skepticism and negativity that surrounds any high-profile player who receives significant media attention, as if being famous somehow makes you less talented at football. But the real adversity, the real test of character, started after Shedeur arrived in Cleveland. He wasn't just placed on the depth chart behind the presumed starter, he was buried. Fourth-string quarterback, sitting behind Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco, and fellow rookie Dillon Gabriel. For someone who had been a starting quarterback throughout his entire college career, who had led Jackson State to unprecedented success, who had then transferred to Colorado and immediately made them relevant again, being relegated to fourth-string status had to be absolutely humbling and incredibly frustrating. Most players in that situation would have handled it poorly. They would have complained to the media, demanded a trade, questioned the coaching staff's evaluation, or mentally checked out. Shedeur Sanders chose a completely different path. He put his head down and went to work. No complaints, no drama, no leaks to the media about being unhappy. He showed up every single day, worked with the scout team, prepared like a professional, and waited for his opportunity while ignoring all the noise and negativity directed at him from outside the building. That approach didn't go unnoticed inside the Browns facility. Veterans were watching, coaches were taking notes. Everyone was evaluating how this high-profile rookie was handling an undeniably difficult situation. The preseason game against the Panthers gave Shedeur his first real opportunity to show what he could do in a game setting, and he took full advantage. He performed well, made plays, showed the arm talent and decision-making that had made him a highly touted prospect. The coaching staff and front office had to notice. The veterans certainly did. But even after that solid preseason performance, absolutely nothing changed in terms of his status on the depth chart. He remained the fourth quarterback, barely getting any practice reps with the starting offense, essentially treated like a developmental project who might never see meaningful playing time in an actual game that mattered. The criticism directed at Shedeur throughout this entire process was often deeply personal and completely unfair. People called him arrogant, egocentric, entitled. They said he was only getting attention because of his famous father, as if Deion Sanders was out there throwing touchdown passes for him. They claimed he didn't have the humility or work ethic necessary to succeed at the NFL level, despite having absolutely zero evidence to support those character assassinations. The negativity surrounding Shedeur was relentless, and it had to be exhausting to deal with even if he wasn't publicly responding to it. But here's what all those critics completely missed while they were busy tearing down a young man trying to achieve his dreams. Shedeur never complained publicly about his situation, not once. He never demanded a trade or threw his coaches under the bus. He never leaked stories to sympathetic media members about how unfairly he was being treated. He showed up every single day, worked with the scout team, prepared like a professional, and waited patiently for his opportunity while completely ignoring all the noise and negativity being directed at him from outside the organization. That kind of maturity and professionalism is rare for any player, let alone a rookie quarterback who came from a high-profile college program and had every reason to believe he should be starting immediately. That approach earned him genuine respect in the Browns locker room, particularly from veteran leaders like Myles Garrett, who understand exactly what it takes to succeed in the NFL. They watched Shedeur handle an incredibly difficult situation with maturity beyond his years. They saw him working hard in practice, even though he wasn't getting meaningful reps with the starting offense. They observed how he prepared, how he carried himself, how he treated teammates and staff members, and they came away genuinely impressed. By the time Shedeur finally got his chance to start due to Dillon Gabriel's concussion, he had already won over key teammates through his actions rather than his words. Myles Garrett's public support is the most visible and significant example of that respect, but it's definitely not the only one. Throughout Shedeur's debut start, you could see teammates celebrating his successes with genuine enthusiasm and excitement. After big plays, players were mobbing him with authentic emotion rather than perfunctory congratulations. The energy on the sideline was noticeably different. More electric, more engaged, more excited. That's what happens when a locker room genuinely believes in their quarterback and wants to see him succeed, not just because they're supposed to support teammates, but because they actually think this guy is special and gives them the best chance to win football games. The situation that Kevin Stefanski now finds himself in is absolutely fascinating from a leadership, organizational management, and pure football strategy perspective. Dillon Gabriel remains in concussion protocol with no firm timeline for when he'll be medically cleared to return to action. Player health and safety must be the priority, and nobody should be rushed back from a concussion before they're fully ready. But even when Gabriel is eventually cleared from a medical standpoint, Stefanski faces an incredibly difficult decision that will absolutely define his tenure in Cleveland and potentially determine whether he keeps his job moving forward. On one hand, you have Dillon Gabriel, who was the quarterback that started the season. There's organizational inertia, commitment to previous decisions, and the natural human tendency to stick with your initial plan even when circumstances change dramatically. Stefanski could argue that Gabriel deserves to get his job back once he's healthy. That one spectacular game from Shedeur doesn't erase everything that came before. That continuity and stability at the quarterback position matter for offensive rhythm and development. Those are all reasonable arguments that coaching staffs make all the time when faced with quarterback controversies. On the other hand, Shedeur Sanders just made history by becoming the first Browns rookie quarterback to win his debut start in 30 years. Let that sink in. 30 years. An entire generation of Browns fans had never seen a rookie quarterback win his first start until Shedeur did it. He didn't just win either. He showed playmaking ability that has the entire locker room, including the team's best player and franchise cornerstone, publicly endorsing him. He brought an energy and excitement to the offense that had been completely missing. The fans are absolutely clamoring for him to remain the starter. The momentum is entirely on his side, and most importantly, he proved he can play at this level and win games, which is ultimately the only thing that actually matters in professional football. The phrase about them no longer wanting Dillon Gabriel as quarterback might seem dramatic or clickbaity on the surface, but based on the reactions from players, the energy around Shedeur's performance, and the public comments from Myles Garrett, it's actually not far from the truth at all. When your defensive leader is deliberately using his post-game press conference platform to praise the rookie quarterback's abilities, when teammates are celebrating his plays with genuine excitement rather than obligation, when the entire building has a noticeably different feel and energy with Shedeur under center, that sends an absolutely unmistakable message about which direction the locker room wants this organization to go. This puts Kevin Stefanski in an incredibly precarious position that could determine his entire future in Cleveland. If he brings Dillon Gabriel back as the starter once Gabriel is cleared from concussion protocol, he's going directly against what the locker room clearly wants. He's potentially alienating Myles Garrett and other veteran leaders who have seen what Shedeur can do and genuinely believe he gives them the best chance to win games. He's disappointing and frustrating fans who are absolutely desperate to see more of the rookie quarterback who just ended a 30-year drought and brought excitement back to the position. And he's risking a full-blown quarterback controversy that could completely derail whatever's left of the season and poison the locker room atmosphere. But if Stefanski commits to Shedeur as the starter moving forward, he's essentially admitting that his previous evaluation and depth chart decisions were completely wrong. He's publicly acknowledging that the fourth-string quarterback who wasn't getting meaningful practice reps was actually better than all the guys ahead of him the entire time. That's an incredibly difficult thing for any coach to admit, especially when they're already facing scrutiny about their decision-making, offensive schemes, and overall job security. Coaches have egos just like everyone else, and admitting you were that wrong about something that important is professionally humbling in the extreme. The comparison between Shedeur and Dylan Gabriel is interesting because they represent completely different quarterback archetypes and career trajectories. Gabriel was drafted higher and was given every possible advantage from day one. First-team reps throughout training camp and the preseason. The starting job handed to him before he'd proven anything. Every organizational resource focused on his development and success. But when you watch the actual game tape and see the plays Shedeur made in his debut, it's genuinely hard to understand what the Browns saw in Gabriel that made them so committed to him over Sanders. The concussion that Gabriel suffered is obviously not his fault, and is a serious medical situation that needs to be handled with appropriate caution and zero pressure to return before he's completely healthy. Nobody wants to see any player risk their long-term health for short-term football gains. But from a team-building and organizational perspective, that injury created an unexpected opportunity for Shedeur to show what he could do, and he absolutely seized that moment with both hands. Sometimes in sports and in life, your opportunity comes in completely unexpected ways at completely unexpected times. How you respond to that opportunity when it finally arrives determines your entire career trajectory. Shedeur responded by making history, earning respect from teammates and coaches, and potentially changing the entire future of the Cleveland Browns franchise. The upcoming game against the San Francisco 49ers presents another fascinating storyline with enormous implications. The 49ers are a legitimately talented team with a strong, well-coached defense that will present a significantly stiffer challenge than the Raiders did. If Shedeur starts that game and performs well against a quality opponent with a competent defensive scheme, it will absolutely strengthen the case that he should be the permanent starter, and that his Raiders' performance wasn't just a one-game fluke against a weak opponent. If he struggles, which is certainly possible given the quality of San Francisco's defense, critics will immediately say the Raiders' game was an aberration and he's not ready for the consistent week-to-week grind of an NFL season. Either way, that 49ers game will be must-watch television because of the massive implications for Cleveland's quarterback situation and potentially the entire direction of the franchise. Kevin Stefanski's careful refusal to commit to Shedeur as the starter moving forward is extremely telling about his mindset and approach. In his post-game comments, he was appropriately complimentary of Shedeur's performance, but deliberately non-committal about the future. Those calculated non-answers suggest he's trying to keep all his options open and not box himself into a corner before he's ready to make a final decision. But that kind of ambiguity and uncertainty creates an atmosphere that can be absolutely toxic in a professional locker room. Players desperately want to know who their quarterback is. They want to rally around one guy, build chemistry and trust, develop timing on routes, and establish the kind of cohesion that only comes from consistent work together. The wishy-washy approach of keeping everyone guessing and refusing to commit one way or the other serves absolutely nobody's interests and creates unnecessary drama and distraction. The warning that Myles Garrett is sending to Stefanski, while not explicitly stated in those exact terms, is crystal clear when you read between the lines and understand the subtext of his comments. By publicly praising Shedeur's abilities and specifically highlighting a throw that most NFL quarterbacks cannot make, Garrett is telling his head coach in no uncertain terms that this is special talent and you better not screw this up. When your best defensive player, your team leader, your franchise cornerstone is deliberately going out of his way to endorse the rookie quarterback, you absolutely have to listen. Ignoring that message would be organizational malpractice and could potentially cost Stefanski his job. The broader context of Browns franchise history makes this situation even more significant and emotionally charged for long-suffering Cleveland fans. This franchise has been desperately searching for a franchise quarterback for literally decades. They've drafted quarterbacks high in the first round. They've signed veteran free agents to massive contracts. They've traded valuable assets for established starters. They've tried absolutely everything imaginable to solve the quarterback position. Nothing has worked for any sustained period of time. The quarterback carousel has been relentless and depressing, a constant source of mockery and frustration for one of the NFL's oldest and most historically significant franchises. And now, completely unexpectedly, in a way that nobody could have predicted, they might have found their answer in a fifth-round pick, who was the fourth-string quarterback just a few weeks ago. If Shedeur Sanders develops into the franchise quarterback that his debut performance suggests he could become, it would be one of the great draft steals in NFL history. It would completely validate Andrew Berry's talent evaluation and his willingness to take Shedeur despite all the skepticism and criticism from media and fans, and it would finally, mercifully end Cleveland's decades-long quarterback nightmare that has defined and limited the franchise for an entire generation. But all of that enormous potential can only be realized if the coaching staff and organization fully commit to Shedeur and give him the support, resources, and opportunity necessary to develop. Pulling him in and out of the lineup, creating quarterback controversies, failing to build the offense around his specific strengths and abilities. All of those things would sabotage his development and potentially waste a golden opportunity that the Browns have stumbled into almost by accident. The fan reaction to this entire situation has been overwhelmingly in favor of keeping Shedeur as the starter. Browns fans are absolutely desperate for quarterback stability and success after decades of disappointment. They've suffered through an endless parade of failed quarterbacks and false hope. They've watched other franchises find franchise quarterbacks, while Cleveland cycled through replacement-level players who never lasted more than a season or two. So,